Everybody to our latest live stream. Hope everybody's having a good evening so far. We have a lot to talk about tonight in terms of severe weather. There is a lot of stuff that I'm going to be breaking down for you in this live stream, including timing, threats, the ingredients as well that are going to be going into the severe weather outbreak that's expected tomorrow. We'll also be discussing the flooding that is ongoing in California right now. I'll give you a little update on that as well. And we'll also be discussing the winter storm potential over the next 48 to 72 hours. I'll give you a full breakdown on all that in this forecast. Before we get too far into it, make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already. All right, let's first begin with what's happening across the United States this evening, which all begins really with just one thing, and that is the trough that we've been watching over the last several days. If you've been watching my video forecasts, I've been mentioning this almost every single day for the past about week, that this is something that we have to watch for very closely, and it obviously is becoming to fruition now as it continues to move off to the east. This is a system that brought a lot of rain to areas like San Francisco, and if you have not already heard, San Francisco actually just saw about 5.5 inches of rain yesterday, and that was only in one single day. That is the most rain that they've seen, or second most rain that they've seen ever since 1846, I think, in a single day. So again, crazy system that we're seeing here. It brought flooding rain to areas in Northern California as well as Central California, and this system is now moving off to the east, and it will have that potential for not just a severe weather outbreak, but also the potential for a winter storm. Right now, a lot of cloud cover across areas from Texas all the way back through about Nebraska. Again, this is a system that will be evolving over the next 24 to 48 hours, as it will bring the potential for severe weather both tomorrow as well as Tuesday, and even into Wednesday. We'll have a chance for maybe at least a little bit of severe weather by Wednesday. Over on the east half of the United States, fairly dry for the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic regions, and Northeast. Not a whole lot of activity over that direction. Florida seeing a few skirting clouds, maybe a passing shower at the most. Nothing too crazy. Back up into New England, a couple of little maybe passing showers as well, but again, nothing substantial is coming out of that either. The biggest system, the biggest concern right now is that trough that is centered just off to the west right now of Kansas. So this will be a system to watch for, again, over the next 48 hours. Big talk about watches and warnings, primarily for the winter weather warnings that we have ongoing. We have several of them. They really go all the way from California and the Sierra Nevada all the way back through the Midwest, which is where we're going to see this winter storm really ramp up. So biggest concern right now for a winter storm will be from about Colorado and Wyoming all the way back through the Midwest into Wisconsin. Right now, there are winter storm warnings in effect in these pink boxes. We actually have ice storm warnings in effect as well for those in northwest Iowa, as well as extreme southern portions of Minnesota and east and northeastern portions of Nebraska. So an area to watch for very closely, as we'll have that potential for not just a lot of snow, but we also could see some ice. Very well could hinder your travel, commute, and whatnot going into the next few days. I'll have more updates on that later in this live stream. I'm going to primarily be focusing on the severe weather first. We also have a flood watch ongoing for those in East Texas, West Louisiana, and southern portions of Arkansas. A few inches of rain will be possible there here over the upcoming 24 to 48 hours. Now, obviously, we do have an enhanced risk of severe weather. If you've not already heard, the Storm Prediction Center issued this a couple of days ago. There is an enhanced risk of severe weather. More closely, this is the current region that we're looking at. So about central, southern, and western portions of Arkansas, back through northeast and East Texas, and as well as into northwest Louisiana, is the main area right now for the potential for a severe weather outbreak, if not the potential for a tornado outbreak, does exist in this region. So again, very, very key that you pay attention to this region. If you're in this area tomorrow, make sure you already have a plan in place and a plan to be able to shelter and whatnot if you are under any tornado warnings. Also, make sure you take those proper precautions. Bring your car into your garage, bring loose lawn items inside like Christmas decorations, inflatables, those sort of things, because they may blow away. There will be a potential for damaging winds as well tomorrow. Slight risk goes from southern Missouri all the way back through about the DFW region there in North Texas, and it also extends all the way back down into Houston, actually, and it also goes as far east right now as western Tennessee and as well as western Mississippi. So a really key area to watch for here over the next 24 to 48 hours. And also going off to the north, there's a marginal threat that goes into central and southern portions of Missouri. Tornado potential for now is a 10% hatched region. Now, there is a low chance that there might be a moderate risk of severe weather tomorrow, and if that does get issued, my personal expectation for a moderate risk of severe weather would probably be in Arkansas. So that would be probably the main area of concern for a potential tornado outbreak, especially there, because I do think the ingredients are going to come together much better in that region in comparison to the other states surrounding, like Louisiana and Texas. But for now, there is obviously the enhanced risk right now for a tornado threat. This is your 10% chance within a 25-mile radius. It goes from about east and northeast Texas, so areas like New Boston back through Texarkana included in this threat, goes into northwest Louisiana including Shreveport, and then back through central portions of Arkansas including Little Rock. So this will be the region to watch for a significant potential for tornadoes. This does mean EF2 plus tornadoes are possible. We may even see a couple of long track tornadoes in this region. Also in that brown shaded region, that is your 5% probability within a 25-mile radius of a tornado, and then back outside of that, this is your 2% area for a within a 25-mile radius for a tornado. I would expect very brief stuff outside of this brown shaded region. So if you're back up in central Missouri, for example, any tornado threat will likely be very weak and brief sort of threat there. And even in portions like northwest or northeast Oklahoma, excuse me, near like Tulsa, if there were to be a tornado near there, it would likely be on the weaker side and probably more brief than not, just due to the setup that we have going into tomorrow. Also, damaging wind potential really similar to the tornado threat. Not really any big changes from this. Only difference is that the wind threat goes slightly further off to the north into East Kansas. And by the way, kind of a crazy feature here, East Kansas will be seeing the potential for some severe storms. Northwest Kansas will be talking about the potential for some snow. So a little bit of a difference there in Kansas. But the biggest concern for damaging winds will be in that red shaded region. This is your 30% probability for a damaging wind event upwards of 60 to 70 miles per hour. So that's going to be the region to watch for very closely in terms of damaging winds. And then the hail threat is not overly high. Lapse rates will not be too supportive here of the potential for large hail, but there might be a couple of storms with maybe some quarter to $half sized hail. Can't rule out an isolated supercell getting upwards of golf ball sized hail, but again, threat does seem to be lower than not right now in terms of that. Obviously, the biggest threat right now will be damaging winds and tornadoes. Hail is kind of on the secondary tier of threats for now. All right, let's go through the ingredients. I'm going to kind of give you an idea of the ingredients with the setup, kind of give you an idea of what to expect with this as well. This is kind of a little bit of a weather geek session, and then we'll get into the timing in about 3 to 4 minutes, so stay tuned. All right, let's go through the moisture first. Obviously, dew points are rising. If you've been outdoors in North Texas, for example, dew points this morning were like in the upper 40s, mid 40s. You were probably feeling like, oh, it's really dry outside. Nothing too crazy is coming, right? Well, unfortunately, there is definitely that potential, again, for some severe weather, and that's all due to the fact we have this surging southerly wind bringing this extreme amount, or not extreme amount of moisture, but a lot of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. We're already beginning to have some dew points upwards into the low to mid 60s, back near areas like New Orleans. Those areas are already into the low 70s. Now, by tomorrow around lunchtime, dew points will surge into the mid 60s across areas like DFW, all the way back through Texarkana, possibly getting close to 70 as well. And then back over even into Arkansas. This is the concerning area to me that I think they'll have possibly the worst of the severe weather from central and southern Arkansas. This region could potentially see dew points upwards of near 70 degrees. That will create a lot of buoyancy, which leads to a higher potential for severe weather in a lot of cases. So this is the concerning area right now, would be central and southern Arkansas, and even into northern Louisiana as well. Not ruling that out either, and as well as eastern Texas. All these areas have those dew points upwards of into the upper 60s. Again, a lot of buoyancy will be available there. Eventually going to the evening hours, heading into Monday night, we'll have that cold front and as well as the dry line move off to the east. Here's your cold front over North Texas and your DFW, extending back through Oklahoma. This will be the area that we might have a few storms fire up on, possibly during the evening hours, but I would anticipate the greatest severe weather threat to actually be out in front of this cold front due to how much moisture we'll see. Really the highest tornado threat will likely be out of either maybe this first line of storms, so the first like cluster of storms that develops during the afternoon, which you'll see in the timing here in just a second. This area would probably see the initial storms that could potentially pose a tornado threat, but definitely damaging winds more concerning there. And then the secondary area of storms will form right along that cold front. That is an area that we could potentially see some strong and long track tornadoes as well. So this will be an area to watch for very closely. I don't really think DFW will get into too much action on this. I think the greater concern will be once this cold front moves a bit further to the east into areas like western Arkansas, and I'll kind of show you why here in just a second. And also, here's the infrared imagery going over the next 24 24 to 48 hours. I just want to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of the really the explosion of storms that we're going to see tomorrow. This is just a simulated model, but this is when we'll probably see some storms firing up, is right around lunchtime. So around about 10, 11, 12 o'clock tomorrow, late morning to the early afternoon, as we'll have some of those showers and storms developing. That is our round 1 of 2, and then our round 2 will form behind that along that cold front, so you can eventually see these storms evolve over over Arkansas as well as into Louisiana. And also the secondary area of storms is going to likely form back over in Oklahoma, maybe into North Texas along that cold front. That could also pose the potential for some significant severe weather. That is where a tornado threat might be even higher than what it will be with that first initial area of storms. And again, I'll show you more details on that here in the timing here in just a moment. Let's go through the instability as well. Another key ingredient to severe weather. This is essentially like gasoline into a vehicle. It essentially is just the fuel to thunderstorms, able to develop severe thunderstorms as well. Instability is really needed in these sort of situations, and a lot of instability will be available tomorrow. Values upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram will be available, which is kind of in the moderate side of instability. Again, you don't need a ton of instability for storms to develop. Really, about 500 joules per kilogram is a decent number for that storm development, so definitely something to keep in mind there. Eventually going into late Monday into Tuesday, again, we're still going to be talking about a lot of instability, upwards of about 1,000 to potentially 2,000 joules per kilogram from about central portions of Arkansas back through eastern and southeast Texas. So that's the region that we're watching for the potential for an increased amount of instability. Also, the lapse rate's another big key ingredient. This is more for the hail potential more than anything, but going into Monday morning, it's going to primarily, the lapse rates are going to be upwards of 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer. That essentially means that once we go further up into the atmosphere, the temperature is having a much more steep decline. That can increase the hail potential, but overall, we're not really going to be talking about a whole lot of storms during the morning, so it's kind of pointless. But once we get closer to the afternoon hours, the lapse rates just kind of fall off. So I'm not really going to be talking about too much of a hail threat for tomorrow. I still think this is more of a damaging wind and tornado threat across areas in the southern plains, back again through northern Louisiana and southern and central portions of Arkansas. And eventually going closer to the evening, we're still talking about lapse rates near about 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Again, not very supportive of significant hail. We very well might see some scattered, maybe quarter to half dollar sized hail, but nothing too significant right now is expected in terms of hail. So just a little thing there. Again, typically we need about 8 to 9 degrees Celsius per kilometer for lapse rates to be able to see maybe some larger hailstones, but we just don't have that tomorrow. So again, tornado threat, damaging wind threat does seem to be more concerning. Tornado parameter, another very key little thing to look at once we go into a severe weather event like this, gives us an idea of what we can expect in terms of a tornado threat. And once we go into tomorrow around about lunchtime, just after that, so around 1, 2 o'clock, we'll start to see values here between 1 to 2. Any of these gray as well as like cyan blue colors, those are indicating values around 1 to 2, which is kind of in that moderate stage for maybe a few tornadoes. That's kind of the region that we're watching pretty closely for. Eventually closer to the evening hours, so right around 5, 6 o'clock, values start to shoot up closer to 2 to 3, which indicates they'll have probably a higher tornado potential across areas in eastern Oklahoma, back through northeast Texas, especially during this time around about 5, 6 o'clock tomorrow, around the evening hours, late afternoon, early evening, whichever one you want to go by. Eventually going closer to about 8 to 9 o'clock, the tornado parameter values are still up there. I mean, we're still talking about 1 to 2, maybe upwards of 2 to 3 in some pockets there through central portions of Arkansas. So tornado threat will still definitely be there all the way through Arkansas and even into Louisiana. Northern Louisiana still have some tornado parameter values up there of 1-ish. So that will still be definitely an opportunity there for a few tornadoes as well. Again, anywhere from northern Louisiana back through central Arkansas and northeast Texas. Now, this is one of the most important ingredients, or not ingredients, but really one of the more key computer models that we look at for a tornado sort of setup. So this is our updraft helicity. This gives us an idea of where we can expect tornadoes, whether they might be a little bit more long tracked, and kind of gives us an idea, a bit more of a confined look at what we might be able to see going to tomorrow. And really, once you start to see more of these gray lines, it gives us more of an indication of that we might see some more of these tornadoes, potentially a lot of them. I mean, we're possibly going to be talking upwards of 5 to 10 tornadoes tomorrow. And with this sort of setup, I mean, you see these longer lines, that can indicate the potential for some long track tornadoes. So definitely a big concern, especially across areas in Arkansas. Really going to be an area to watch for very closely tomorrow, and maybe even through northeast Texas, southeast Oklahoma as well. All those areas really under the gun for that potential for maybe a tornado outbreak going to tomorrow. So again, that's a really key ingredient here. Also, another thing to look at is the lifted index. This gives us a bit more of an idea of what we can expect in terms of a severe weather event. If you're not very familiar with the lifted index, this is just a very fancy term for like instability almost. Once we start to have values upwards of -8 to -10 degrees Celsius, it really just means that we have a much higher chance of severe weather in these areas. So really clearly any of these purple areas here are going to represent a much higher chance for severe weather. So eastern and northeastern portions of Texas back through northern Louisiana during the around lunchtime hour, and then eventually going to the afternoon and evening hours, we're still going to have those higher values more likely than not over Arkansas. And then eventually into the evening, values are still up there around -5 degrees Celsius, which is again really in that range for at least some moderate instability there as we go into Arkansas. All right, two more things until we get to the timing. This is the low-level jet, really key ingredient for low-level rotation with these sort of storms. So really it ramps up during the later portion of the afternoon into the early evening across areas like Arkansas. And where you see that red color represents 50 to 60 knots of a low-level jet. That's a pretty strong low-level jet that we're talking about tomorrow that will help to be able to rotate these supercells across areas like Arkansas and as well as northern Louisiana and northeast Texas. And eventually by the evening and overnight hours, we're still talking about a pretty strong low-level jet between about 55 to 60 knots as it marches across areas like Arkansas and potentially even into western Mississippi by the late evening hours. Also closer to the lower levels, this is 850 millibars, so a little bit lower in the elevation, but we're still talking about high wind speeds even that low. This again kind of equivalates to a higher amount of rotation that we'll see with these supercells tomorrow, especially across those areas that I've outlined already in the southern plains, and eventually going into the overnight hours, we're still talking about pretty strong lower level winds around 50 to 60 knots. So again, very prime setup for severe weather. And I think we actually, we have one more and then we'll get to the timing. This is the LCL. This is our level of our lifting condensation level. This gives us an idea of where we can see clouds, what level they will be rising from tomorrow, and this really can help to be able to kind of determine what the tornado threat might be as well. And overall, it is forecasted to likely be really not much of any sort of issues with where these clouds will likely start to develop. So they'll be pretty low to the ground, which will help to again aid that potential for a tornado threat. I would kind of compare this almost to the last tornado event that we had in North Texas back in December 11th, that kind of time frame when we had that sort of severe weather outbreak. That's kind of a similar kind of essence to what we'll probably see tomorrow in terms of where the clouds will develop from. Not necessarily the same setup in terms of all the severe threats, because I think the December 11th event was probably much more significant than what we'll see in terms of this event. So a couple of key little things there. All right, we'll get into the timing here in just a second. Let me just get a sip of water. Hope everybody's doing well tonight, by the way. And yeah, 1 second. Get back to this real quick. All right, thank you, Richard, for the $10 super chat. Hey, I appreciate that a lot, Richard. Thank you very much. Also, thank you, Theodore, for becoming a 1-month Storm Chaser member. I appreciate that, as well as Sherry. Thank you for becoming a 1-month Tornado Chaser member. I do appreciate that as well. And there's a lot of them on here. I think I got all of them, right? Hopefully. Oh, thank you, Richard, as well, for 5 gifted memberships. I appreciate that a lot. Another 5. I missed them all at the beginning. I apologize. Thanks for the 5 gifted memberships. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything else here. See, I think I missed anything else. Thanks again, Richard. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you, Katie, for becoming a 5-month Hurricane Chaser member. I appreciate that a lot as well. Thank you. Appreciate your support. All right, I'll get to some questions, by the way, here pretty soon. We only have a few more slides to go, and a lot of it is just timing-based stuff. So we'll go through the timing here first, and then we'll get back to some questions and whatnot. By the way, if you're enjoying the stream so far, make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already. All right, let's get through the timing. We're going to begin with Oklahoma, then we'll kind of shift our focus more further to the east as we go really further to the east. So beginning with Oklahoma during the morning hours, really not a whole lot of activity. Your cold front is still well back out here to the west, so areas like Oklahoma, or really western Oklahoma, might have a few passing showers. Nothing severe is expected there during the morning. Eventually, closer to the afternoon hours, storms will really fire up in southeast Oklahoma, especially southeast of McAllister. That is where a cluster of storms may develop around 2 to 3 o'clock. Back near areas like Oklahoma City is our area of storms along the cold front. This is a region that would expect more of a damaging wind threat initially. It could evolve into more of a tornado threat as that line pushes more to the east, closer to areas like western Arkansas. So this is going to be a concerning area as we go further into the afternoon, really. So by 4 o'clock, storms along that cold front from about Sherman, Texas, back over through Tulsa, more of a scattered variety of storms. Eventually by about 5 to 6 o'clock, storms will be rolling through McAllister as well as areas near Tulsa. And eventually by about 7 o'clock, storms for the most part will be in far eastern Oklahoma. If not, they'll already be crossing into Arkansas. And by about 9 o'clock, the entire state of Oklahoma will for the most part be done with severe weather, and really not a whole lot of rain left either after that. So definitely a system to watch for there in Oklahoma. Again, again, this is still a very really important event to watch, even if you're not in that enhanced risk of severe weather. Because, for example, if we just go back here real quick, again, the enhanced risk of severe weather does include southeast Oklahoma, but we very well may see some pretty significant severe weather even as far north and west as areas back through McAllister. So definitely a region to still watch for. Even if you're in that slight risk or more marginal threat, you should still be concerned about this. Make sure you have a plan in place and be ready, because again, severe weather is definitely be pretty primed again across this entire system. If storms develop, again, they really could rapidly strengthen. So definitely a system to watch for even in Oklahoma. All right, let's go into North Texas. Again, overnight tonight, not a whole lot of rain's expected there. By tomorrow morning, some passing showers. Storms will start to fire up right around lunchtime tomorrow near Texarkana back through Tyler, Texas. This will be a region to watch for some strong downburst winds, maybe some large hail as well out of those initial storms, and they'll eventually evolve as they move off to the north and east, potentially posing maybe a isolated tornado threat by the early afternoon hours. By about 2 o'clock, storms still firing up across areas in northeast Texas, and you can again see near Paris, Texas, for example, these pinks representing that potential for some hail, as well as really representing stronger storm activity with this specific computer model, again, across northeast Texas, back through southwest Arkansas. By about 3 to 4 o'clock, we may have a couple of storms fire up again along this cold frontal boundary, which will arrive through DFW and Dallas, Plano, and Sherman by about 3 to 4 o'clock. So storms may develop off of that cold front. I do not anticipate a substantial severe weather outbreak with this cold front in North Texas, but maybe an isolated severe storm or two maybe in the realm of possibility for those in Dallas and Plano. Eventually, by about 6 to 7 o'clock, that shifts off to the east. So areas in northeast Texas will be talking about the potential for maybe a tornado threat along that cold front near Texarkana, for example. By 8 to 9 o'clock, storms continue to march to the east and will eventually move into areas like Louisiana as well as Arkansas, going closer to midnight and then eventually going to the overnight hours. Still some storm activity back out that direction. All right, let's go to Louisiana. Then we'll go over to Arkansas's timing as well. Again, really dry night tonight, maybe a couple of passing showers in the morning commute. By the afternoon, we're still talking about primarily just shower activity, maybe an isolated storm, but I don't expect much severe weather up until at least after about noontime tomorrow. By about 3 to 4 o'clock, storms will still be ongoing, primarily in western Louisiana, even maybe by Shreveport, even though there's not one showing on this model. We very well may see a couple of storms up that direction. By 6 to 7 o'clock, cluster of storms still ongoing through Louisiana. I would expect more of a damaging wind concern with that initial line, and eventually going closer to the overnight hours, another line of storms will develop along that cold front, which will likely be more of a damaging wind concern as well, with a couple of tornadoes definitely not out of the question. So really overall, a lot of storm activities expected through the overnight hours. Again, I would anticipate more of a damaging wind threat out of that line of storms. They'll go all the way through Arkansas and eventually going into into Tuesday afternoon. More storm activities expected. That will be associated with a day 3 slight risk that we'll be watching. I'll have more of an update on that here in just a moment as well. We have another chance for severe weather on Tuesday and as well as Wednesday. So some important days coming up here over the upcoming days. All right, let's go back through Arkansas as well. This is a really important state to break down because this is an area that we could very well see very significant severe weather. So we're going to start with tomorrow morning around 10 to 11 o'clock. Storms will begin to form as early as around 11 o'clock or so. So again, if you look further to the south here in Arkansas, areas just south of Hot Springs near Pine Bluff, as well as El Dorado, those areas will be talking about the potential for a couple of storms already beginning to develop. Now, this is not an area that I expect a huge tornado threat out of during the late morning and early afternoon. I would expect more of just a variety of isolated tornadoes with this event during that time frame. I still think the greatest tornado threat will likely be along that cold front during the afternoon and evening. But by about 12 to 1 o'clock, we're still going to be talking about a scattered to maybe even numerous area of scattered storms across the state, again, of Arkansas, especially south of Little Rock. That's the area that I'll be more concerned about during the late morning and early afternoon hours. Eventually, by about 3 to 4 o'clock, storms rolling off to the north and east. Really a lot of storm activity here. A lot of these will likely be severe during the mid to late afternoon hours, especially near areas like Little Rock, back through Jonesboro, for example, as well. By 4 to 5 o'clock, a lot of storm activity still ongoing. That first initial cluster of area storms will be moving into areas like northwest Mississippi, western Tennessee, and eventually into Kentucky, which is an area that we do have a potential for severe weather tomorrow. Eventually going closer to 7 to 8 o'clock, more storm activity will begin to develop in western Arkansas near Fort Smith, as well as west of Russellville. This is a region that I would expect a tornado threat as well out of with that cold front. I still think that this might be an area where we might see a bit more of significant severe weather out of going into the evening hours tomorrow. So this will be an area to watch for very closely for those in western Arkansas. Eventually by 9 to 10 o'clock, that line moves off to the east. A lot of storm activity expected across Little Rock, back through El Dorado, and all the way up to the north through Mountain Home. So those areas will be impacted by around then. And eventually by 2 to 3 o'clock, line moves into areas like western and northwest Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky. We may see more of a damaging wind threat for this area of storms going into the overnight hours. But again, make sure that you're prepared for this, because we might see a pretty scattered to maybe even numerous area of damaging winds with a line of storms overnight going into Tuesday morning. So an event to watch for very closely there as well. All right, 1 second. This is the first time, by the way, I've done a standing live stream, so I don't know why, but I'm sweating. All right, let's go through the timing in Missouri. Beginning again with tonight, not a whole lot of rains expected tonight. Storm activity will ramp up probably later in the day Monday. So again, along that cold front is where you might see isolated damaging winds, maybe a brief tornado threat as well for those in southern portions of Missouri. Back near Joplin and Springfield be my more concerning area for the potential for severe weather. Then by 7, 8 o'clock, that line moves further off to the east, becomes much more disorganized in Missouri. So overall, there's again a marginal threat for severe weather, specifically in Missouri. So I'm not expecting a massive severe weather event by any means, but we might see a couple of isolated severe storms. Eventually by about 10, 11, 12 o'clock, still a cluster of storms moving off to the east, primarily just going to be comprised of heavy rain, maybe an isolated storm that's severe, possibly a brief weak tornado. But other than that, most of southern and central Missouri will not see significant severe weather like Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas might see. So if you're in Missouri, no need to panic. Just have a plan in place. Make sure you have a way to receive warnings as well. But again, I wouldn't expect Missouri to be too well impacted by this event. A lot more rain than anything for those areas in Missouri. All right, let's go into Mississippi and Alabama. This will be more of a Tuesday threat, but I do want to break it down for Monday. Then I'll talk more about it in a second on Tuesday's event, because Tuesday is when we could see a potential, maybe another severe weather outbreak across these states. So going into the afternoon on Monday, a couple of scattered storms in northwest Mississippi. Might even see a couple of showers or maybe a couple of elevated storms back from Jackson through Birmingham into Alabama. So an area to watch for a couple of those. But again, no severe weather is expected with that cluster. Could see a couple of storms, though, that might become severe, maybe a little bit of isolated large hail or damaging wind gusts. Eventually going closer to about 5, 6, 7 o'clock, storms move off to the east, and overall it's going to dry out for most of the rest of the evening. And into the overnight hours, that's when we could see a line of storms. I'll have more of a breakdown on that here in just a moment once we get into that timing for Tuesday. Let's go back through Kentucky and Tennessee as well. Again, nothing really tonight, but by tomorrow morning, some scattered showers, maybe an isolated storm out of that. By Monday around 10, 11 o'clock, we might see more of a cluster of storms. Again, this region's more into a marginal risk, if not maybe on the low end, slight risk of severe weather. So maybe some isolated damaging winds, maybe a brief tornado as well. Not impossible out of this, but more than anything, again, it's more of a rain concern the further north you go from really the center of where we're going to see the severe weather, which is, again, Arkansas and Louisiana, as well as East Texas. Eventually going closer to about 12, 1 o'clock, storms move off to the east and as well as the northeast. More of a cluster moves that direction, and eventually into the overnight hours, it'll be more of a line of storms. And eventually from Cincinnati all the way back through Columbia and Nashville, we might actually see some isolated to maybe scattered damaging winds out of that line before it moves off to the east throughout the day Tuesday. A lot of rain, again, is going to be coming out of that as well. And also for those that are back up into Illinois and Indiana, I know I have a lot of viewers from this area. I'm not anticipating a whole lot in terms of severe weather unless you're in the furthest south part of the state, like southern Indiana, southern Illinois, maybe near Springfield or Champaign. You might see an isolated thunderstorm that could maybe produce some smaller hail or gusty winds. But overall, severe weather is not really expected this far to the north. But if you take a close look further to the south here near Evansville, that is a region where we may see a little line that could potentially pose maybe a little bit of damaging winds or isolated quarter-sized hail out of. So just be mindful of that. There'll be more of an overnight threat Monday night to Tuesday. But tornado threat is really going to be non-existent this far to the north. We just do not have the setup really up that direction right now. Also, going into Tuesday, we do have a slight risk of severe weather for those in northwest Georgia, southern Tennessee, all the way through most of Alabama, and as well as a large chunk of Missouri. Marginal threat goes through Tennessee, back through Louisiana, and as well as western Florida. Let's kind of go through the timing here in Alabama and Mississippi again. This is for the line of storms overnight. So again, with all the storms that we're going to see tomorrow, it'll eventually turn into this line of storms that's going to develop back through about Tennessee and all the way back through Louisiana. This will be our line all the way back that direction around 3 a.m. Tuesday. So again, early morning as we'll have some rumbles of thunder knocking at your door if you're anywhere back north or west of Jackson. By the morning hours, if you have any plans to go to school, I'm not sure if school's back in session January 3rd, but if you are going back on Tuesday, again, storms will be starting to roll through areas north north and west of Jackson, Mississippi, right along the interstate, around Tupelo as well, eventually going closer to 9-10 o'clock. Line moves off to the east, not overly quickly, so flooding may become a concern. More of a flash flooding threat is definitely not out of the question, which does explain, by the way, why we do have a flood watch ongoing for a few states right now in the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley. By about lunchtime, we'll have more storm activity ongoing. This is when we may see an increase of a tornado threat. So if you're anywhere in Alabama, Mississippi, and back through eastern portions of Louisiana, this is where we may have a few storms that have some rotation, possibly posing a potential for a couple of tornadoes. I can't rule out an isolated tornado that becomes strong, but I'll give you more details on that tomorrow. I'll have actually a forecast, I think, tomorrow morning, so you'll have an update on that as well. But this will be the region really to watch for the potential for maybe a couple of tornadoes going into the late morning and early afternoon on Tuesday. By about 4 or 5 o'clock, a really large area of storms will still be ongoing, and by the evening hours, most of the storm action will shift to the east, most likely becoming more disorganized and weakening. Shouldn't really see too much in terms of severe weather after about 6 or 7 o'clock Tuesday. It should be more of a morning and afternoon concern. All right, back through Kentucky and Tennessee. I just went over this, but again, same sort of story, more of just a isolated to maybe widely scattered severe weather event, primarily in Tennessee during the morning hours. By the afternoon, most of that storm action shifts to the east. I wouldn't anticipate much in terms of severe weather, though, for Tennessee, at least for Tuesday, as it will most likely more than not just be an isolated damaging wind threat. Again, for Monday, it's a different story. If you're in western portions of Tennessee, you may see a bit more significant severe weather, so definitely something to keep in mind there. All right, going back through the Carolinas as well as Georgia, this will again be for Tuesday. That line will likely impact areas near Atlanta, Georgia during the afternoon hours. Isolated storms will be possible. Can't rely on isolated severe storm. But overall, I'm not anticipating anything too significant in terms of severe weather. And by about Tuesday around 7 o'clock, most of the storm action will likely just be more of isolated severe weather threats and more just rain more than anything for the Carolinas and back through Georgia. Also, overall, over the next several days, a lot of rain is expected. Again, we'll have that winter storm potential back in the northern plains, central plains, and Midwest. And then back in the southeast, a lot of rain is expected there. And back over in California, by the way, look back over this direction. A lot of rain is coming again to California over the next 7 days. If you've not already watched my last few forecasts, I've had a full breakdown on that. Make sure to go check those out. But again, a lot of flooding there in California right now. We are seeing upwards of 5 to 10 inches of rain in some spots. San Francisco just yesterday, by the way, broke their single day most rain ever, or was second place, I think, at 5.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour span. Absolutely unbelievable what we just saw over there. And again, we're now the first day of January. That was the last day of last year that we saw that rain. So quite incredible how much rain they just saw. And it's causing flooding, which is really unfortunate. But one of the great things is that California is seeing rain that they desperately need, but obviously it's coming in way too excessive amounts, so it is causing some problems there. But again, a lot of beneficial rain there. We're seeing several inches of rain, so if people live in California, just kind of a little heads up there. Again, a lot of rain's falling across central and northern California. That will continue, by the way, for the foreseeable future, so definitely something to watch for very closely. All right, that was a lot of talking there for about 32 minutes. All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Welcome on in. Again, this will be an interactive live stream, so if you have questions, you'll be able to ask those here throughout the stream. And also, if you have any questions, again, you can leave those in the chat. If you're new here, make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already. Again, we are on the road right now to 28,500 subscribers, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome. All right, this is going to be slowly going down. Let me make sure. I have a standing desk. We're trying this for the first time. All right, it's coming down. You'll see me here in a second. This is the new standing desk. I just heard my mom laugh in the other room. All right, let's go over to this and there. All right, the light might be a little bit weird. I might have to fix that here in a second. Yeah, 1 second. All right, this is the new setup that we're dealing with here. Let me make sure this is going here. All right, cool. The lighting is a lot better. All right. Gonna rest from standing for half an hour. How's everybody doing? Welcome. All right. Forehead cam, yes. All right. Hey, thanks, Shelly. You too. Happy New Year, by the way, to everybody that's here, which is anybody that's watching. Will Central Texas get anything tomorrow? I wouldn't expect much in Central Texas tomorrow. No, I wouldn't expect much. Let's go back over to Central Texas real quick. This is again the severe weather outline. Depends on where you are, but Central Texas, it's gonna be primarily dry. Again, here's the wind going into tomorrow. This is your cold front around 3 or about 2 o'clock or so. So this will be your cold frontal boundary, and any storms that develop, it'll be again from Oklahoma back through Texas. Along that line, again, we'll have another area of storms during the late morning, early afternoon across northeast Texas through Arkansas. That is a concerning area, but along the cold front, storm activity will primarily be east of Interstate 35W. So I would not anticipate too much in terms of severe weather if you're back over in Central Texas. How much more snow for Arizona? That's a good question. Let me go over to here and pull that up. I haven't really done Arizona weather here in a while, but there's been a lot of significant weather events, and man, if you guys have watched the last couple of videos, we were talking about the flooding event back over in California a lot at the beginning of forecasts, and that was a significant event. This is what we're going to be seeing in Arizona here, it looks like, for the next 48 hours at least. A lot of rain for sure. You look back over near Flagstaff, possibly upwards of half a foot. So yeah, decent amount of snow even over there, especially in the higher elevations there through Arizona. So something to keep in mind there. Also, I will be doing a forecast here in a second on the winter storm. I got to keep adjusting this camera because again, I was standing with my standing desk and now I'm sitting. But I will be going over the winter storm here in just a moment. So if you're waiting for that, by the way, stay tuned. That'll be happening here in just a second. I just did a full 30-minute forecast on the severe weather. Then we'll go over the winter storm. I'll hop back to the severe weather again after that. I'll be answering questions here specifically on severe weather here for the next few minutes. And then we'll go over to the winter storm, and then we'll go back to the severe weather again. Got hammered with rain and it turned into snow. Yeah, if you're in those I'm guessing you're in a bit more of a higher elevation there, because yeah, there's definitely been a decent amount of snow, it looks like, there across Arizona. Arizona is not an area though that we've really covered much here for the last few days at least. It's been more of a concern about the severe weather event and then the flooding back over in California. Again, very significant events overall. And then we'll be talking about the winter storm. Again, we have watches and warnings already in effect across the United States for a winter storm. Here are your winter storm warnings, those pink boxes, winter storm watches back through western Wisconsin. Even got ice storm warnings in effect for northwest Iowa, southern Minnesota, as well as eastern portions of Nebraska. So concerning event is coming up in terms of the winter storm, so we'll have to watch this pretty closely. Oh, 5,000 feet, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, higher elevations are definitely going to be seeing more of that threat for snow as well as that transition. All right, let's go through the winter storm real quick, then we'll go back to some questions and stuff like that. Again, this is the overall view. I just went over the watches and warnings, but this is a map of it again. Again, here's your ice storm warnings that are in effect for those back up in northern Iowa and western Iowa as well. The biggest concern right now is going to be obviously travel impacts with this winter storm. We'll really be talking about that from portions of western Minnesota all the way back through northern Nebraska, as well as southern South Dakota. That red shaded region does indicate major travel impacts are expected, and also the orange is moderate, and then the yellow is minor travel impacts. So much of Wisconsin's in that minor stage right now. That very well could change though over the upcoming 24 to 48 hours, but overall it's not really that much of anything right now across the northern and central plains right now. A couple of passing flurries, that's about it in western Nebraska, but by overnight tonight that will really start to ramp up in snow. We'll start to see some of that light to moderate snow ramp up in portions of Nebraska as well as southern South Dakota. We very well may see the potential for upwards of several inches of snow out of this as well. Eventually going closer to lunchtime, it becomes much more moderate to heavy across portions of southern Nebraska, kind of at the very bottom of your screen. Eventually closer to about sunset or so going into tomorrow. Again, a lot of moderate to heavy snow falling from Minnesota all the way back through Nebraska. Nebraska will really be the hotspot, it looks like, for snow though. And eventually going into the overnight hours Monday into Tuesday, the potential for an ice storm will exist for those in northern and western Iowa, back through even possibly western Wisconsin. We very well may see the potential for some ice, and that very well could accumulate pretty quickly. Eventually going into Tuesday morning and as well as into the early afternoon, moderate to heavy snow will be falling across southern Minnesota and western Wisconsin, and that'll eventually move off to the east, becoming much more of a light variety of snow in terms of snow accumulation and whatnot. So for those in areas like Nebraska as well as South Dakota, we very well could be talking about several inches of snow. We may get upwards of a foot or two, excuse me, of snow as well. For those in northern Nebraska, southern South Dakota, all the way back through southern Minnesota. I would at least expect about a foot of snow though for those back up possibly in northern Nebraska. That'd be my biggest concern for heaviest amount of snow, and all the way back through Minnesota again is definitely a big concern. For those over in Iowa, we could very well be talking about the possibility of somewhere between, again, 1/100th of an inch of ice all the way back upwards of half an inch of ice. That could cause the potential for some power outages, especially if you're north of Des Moines. For Fort Dodge, Mason City, Decorah, Waterloo, and Denison, those areas all have a possibility for some power outages with this possible ice storm here, and it looks very likely that we're going to be seeing very significant ice accumulation, so very well keep that in mind. If you have any travel plans as well, it probably will accumulate to roads if they're untreated, so make sure you're aware of that as well. If you have any traveling plans, if you have to go to work or something like that, I do not recommend it, but if it's an emergency or anything like that, again, ice will likely be on the roadway, so take it slow if at all possible. Eventually going into Monday night to Tuesday, the Midwest will see a little bit of this action. Moderate to heavy snow falling across areas like southern Minnesota, western Wisconsin. Eventually into the afternoon and evening hours, it'll be more of a light to moderate snow that'll extend in a much larger scale area. Here's your trough, and again, this will be our really large area of really light to moderate snow, maybe a little bit of a mixture there as well going through Michigan, but overall, again, a lot of snow is definitely gonna be coming out of this. And even for those in the upper Michigan Peninsula, we might be seeing a few inches of snow, possibly upwards of half a foot in a couple areas there as well. Overall, for accumulation in terms of ice, again, this is your region of ice right now. For those in Wisconsin, don't get too worried yet. Things may change over the next 24 hours, but definitely an area to monitor going to Tuesday as well as Wednesday. We might see a little bit of ice. Overall for snow right now, this is the current estimated amount of snow that we might see. So those in western Wisconsin may see a few inches, possibly upwards of half a foot in a couple areas. And then the upper Michigan Peninsula, once this trough moves a bit further to the east, some areas here could very well see upwards of a few inches of snow. Again, ranging from probably about a coating upwards of maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow there. So that's the overall winter forecast for right now for those that are back up that direction. Again, winter storm does seem very likely at this point. Obviously, the watches and warnings right now do indicate that we'll see one. So for those anywhere from, again, western Wisconsin all the way back through Colorado, this is our region right now of the winter storm, and it's already begun in areas like Wyoming and as well as areas like western Nebraska. It's already beginning tonight, and it will obviously ramp up tomorrow as that trough again evolves. And we've been talking about this a lot on our forecast this week, how this trough will just evolve here over the western side of the United States, and overall by 12 hours or so from now, this trough will move a bit further to the east. It'll eventually have the cold front here probably right around 4 or 5 o'clock tomorrow, and then we'll have that potential for some significant severe weather again in these areas for tomorrow. So anywhere from about southeast Texas back through southern Missouri is really the area of severe weather for tomorrow as well. So be watching that area pretty closely without a doubt. Again, here's the overall threat level right now for those in central, southern Arkansas, and as well as northeast Texas and as well as northwest Louisiana. All right, I'm gonna be opening up a Q&A chat. So for those that are wanting to ask questions about any severe weather questions, winter storm questions, anything like that, a Q&A will be open. So make sure to go check that out. The Q&A is gonna be in the chat here in just a second. And there should be a tab in the chat, so if you want to ask questions, there you go. All right, and I'll be answering questions directly on there. So if you have questions outside of that in the live chat, I'll probably not be looking at many of those. So just ask the Q&A chat. By the way, thank you, Smart, for the $1 super chat. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. Hey, Oki, how you doing? Welcome back. Get my ice skates out. Yeah, we'll go ice skating over there in Iowa. Just give me a second. Let me book a flight. Omaha snow and ice chasers, or chances. Sorry, I thought you just said chasers. Let me go back over to those graphics real quick. Sorry, I thought you said chasers. For those over in Omaha, let's go a little bit closer here. So ice overall, I'm not expecting much of any ice. It should stay just slightly further to your north. However, there's definitely not out of the question that we might see a little bit of a thin glaze of ice, possibly near northern portions of Omaha or just north of there. For sure, it'll probably just be to your north. You might see a thin glaze though. I wouldn't rule that out. But overall, snowfall totals will likely be somewhere in the neighborhood of possibly a coating to maybe a few inches. It's really a sharp divide overall. If we go closer to Nebraska, let me get a more local view here. I'll do a more local view here for those in Nebraska. But this area really has a sharp divide here between rain and snow, and all has to do with really the warmer and more humid air coming out of the Gulf of Mexico than the southerly winds. So that will really play a really key part into what you might see in terms of wintry precipitation. And again, by 6-7 o'clock, it's mostly just rain there near Omaha. Off to your north, there's a little bit of freezing rain, and then back near Sioux City, that's an area that we might have more of a mixture of rain, or freezing rain, snow, and really just basically everything that might be ongoing there near Sioux City. Eventually closer to about 8-9 o'clock, still rain, maybe a brief transition overnight into maybe Tuesday morning, but it does not seem to be that significant if you're over there near Omaha right now. Thank you, Traffic Light, by the way, for becoming a Storm Chaser member. I appreciate that. Thank you. DFW is not in the higher risk. Now, this is the current risk from the Storm Prediction Center. I am anticipating, for those that are wondering, by the way, I actually saw somebody mention this before my stream, about where the best chase for tornado chasing will be. And I know a few of you guys might be storm chasing and whatnot. For me, if I were to go out here and say, this is where I'm going to chase for a tornado or something like that, it would likely be somewhere, I mean, I would start probably somewhere near Little Rock, maybe just southwest of Little Rock. So somewhere in this region is probably a pretty reasonable area to probably start your storm chase, maybe near Texarkana as well, depending on when you're going to be storm chasing. I mean, if you're having a more of a, like a morning to afternoon storm chase, definitely start probably closer to Texarkana. If you're going to be starting more closer to the late afternoon and evening, I would recommend starting possibly closer to Little Rock. So if you have any plans to storm chase, that does seem to be more of a favorable area right now for a tornado threat. And I wouldn't be surprised if this enhanced risk even shifts a bit further to the north, maybe by a little bit. It could very well go a little bit further north here. I wouldn't rule that out at this point. Maybe even a bit further to the east. And I really wouldn't rule out if it went a little bit further to the east and maybe cut off a little area there in eastern North Texas. It's not out of the question. Will we see a moderate threat? I've been asked that question dozens of times. It's not out of the question either. I'm not the Storm Prediction Center. I can't make that up or anything like that, but it's not out of the question that they might add a moderate threat of severe weather, possibly in Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to be really the main area for a significant tornado threat tomorrow. And if we go back through some of the ingredients and the computer models and whatnot, Arkansas, Louisiana seem to be the key areas right now for a potential tornado outbreak. If we just go back to the updraft helicity, this gives us more of an idea of the potential for some strong tornadoes and long track tornadoes. And all these gray lines really give you an indication of where that threat does exist. This is really the tornado threat area right now that I'm anticipating. Again, it's a pretty large area, but once you kind of break it down a bit more, it does seem to be much more significant here in northern Louisiana, back through central and southern portions of Arkansas. So that's really what I'm kind of anticipating right now in terms of that significant severe weather threat in terms of tornadoes. And if we go back over to, I have so many tabs open, so I have to kind of find it here. Also, the low-level jet, for example, is going to be very strong across these areas as well. Again, from northeast Texas, near Texarkana and New Boston, all the way back through central and southern Arkansas. And once you see this red color, this indicates 40 to 60 knots of the low-level jet, which really means that we'll have some low-level rotation here in the lower levels. That will really help to be able to amp up the potential for a few tornadoes. Again, a couple of those very well could be strong and maybe even long-tracked, especially, again, if you're in Arkansas. So definitely a concerning area to watch for without a doubt. So I'll be watching that area pretty closely there. All right, let's get back to some questions here. By the way, if you're just tuning in for the first time, again, make sure to hit the like button down below. It helps us get out to much more people that are in the track of these severe storms for tomorrow. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Again, we keep you updated with the latest on all the severe weather. We're only 14 subscribers right now from 28,500, so make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Also, again, if you have any questions, leave those in the Q&A chat. I will be answering those in the Q&A chat more often than not here over the next few minutes. All right, let's see. Is Virginia expected to get anything severe? Virginia probably will not see much. It'll be possibly a marginal threat on Wednesday. Maybe. You might see a marginal threat then. Otherwise, I would not anticipate anything too crazy there. Yeah, Virginia won't see much of anything significant at least, but isolated severe weather possible on Wednesday. Let's see, north of the Iowa border, Austin, Minnesota. So for those near Austin, Minnesota, let me look up where that is first. For the ice storm, again, there will be an ice storm and a winter storm back up in the northern half of the United States, primarily in Iowa. Again, here are your watches and warnings. This is where your ice storm warning is in effect right now for those in southern Minnesota. For you in Austin, Minnesota, you are in the threat right now for an ice storm. But if we go back over to the ice accumulation, I have it on the other tabs here. So ice accumulation, possibly upwards of maybe a tenth to maybe a quarter of an inch, somewhere in that range there, probably near Austin. So yeah, Austin, Minnesota is definitely included in that potential right now for some ice. So yeah, definitely be mindful of that. But yeah, obviously it could go a little bit further to the north, but I would definitely anticipate some ice up that direction as well. All right. Well, anything being hitting Missouri, specifically for Kansas City. Kansas City is also in that potential for severe weather, I believe, for tomorrow, at least a marginal threat. Yeah, you guys are at a marginal threat. I wouldn't anticipate significant severe weather, but there's possibility for some isolated damaging winds without a doubt. Yeah, you're definitely in that potential tomorrow for maybe some isolated damaging winds. No doubt about that. But other than that, I wouldn't expect much. It's going to be more of a rain threat, but isolated damaging winds not out of the question. Ma S, I'm in central North Carolina. Do you see any bad weather with this system? Thanks so much. No problem. For those in North Carolina, only concern right now is going to be more of a marginal threat. So maybe some isolated severe weather for those over in the Carolinas, possibly late Tuesday into Wednesday. That's the main, I expect more of a Wednesday concern, if anything, but it should be a pretty low threat right now. Yeah, if there's anything updated there, I'll keep you updated, but more than anything, it's going to be more of a lower end threat for those over there in Minnesota, or excuse me, not Minnesota, North Carolina. Any chance of this turning into a bomb cyclone? I would not expect this to turn into a bomb cyclone, no. Let me just real quick do this. Sorry, I'm gonna stand again here. 1 second. All right, we're going back to standing mode here. Good time to practice this transition now and not later, because it is definitely a painful 30-second transition that we're in. All right, you'll see me rising up here in just a second. Let me go back to that question here. I just forgot it. Bomb cyclone. No, this will not turn into a bomb cyclone. Bomb cyclone is a different story when it comes to, a bomb cyclone, this is not anywhere really in comparison to what we just saw with the blizzard. The blizzard was obviously much more significant. If you remember, the blizzard was ongoing there in the Midwest and as well as even through portions of the northern plains, and that was more of a much more significant trough. This will not get to that magnitude. We're not going to see the, if we go to the, let me try to find an open tab here. I have way too many tabs open. Let me go kind of nationwide here and go to this. And I'll kind of give you a little breakdown here. Here's your trough over the Central Plains, 1,002 millibars. The one that we saw over there in Canada that brought the blizzard a couple weeks ago, back near Christmas time, that was a trough that got downwards of around 960 millibars. This barely will get under 1,000, so it's not going to become a bomb cyclone by any means. At least I don't expect it will. A bomb cyclone will really have to rapidly strengthen, and it just does not have that sort of characteristic. So no, this will not be a bomb cyclone by any means. That's like kind of like the simplistic answer here. But yeah, it's barely going to get under 1,000 millibars. Again, the one that we had was way back up here around 970 millibars, right around 965, I think it got down to, or 960. So yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be a bomb cyclone. All right. Again, here's your nationwide view over the next 24 to 48 hours. Pretty wild. Again, here's your severe weather, heavy rain going all the way back through the Midwest even, and then your winter and ice storm back up here into the northern plains and as well as through the central plains and into the Midwest. Again, this is a very, this is not a bomb cyclone. It's not as significant as what we saw at that blizzard, but this is definitely a very critical event. It has a lot of similar characteristics in terms of severe weather and whatnot. So that's obviously a big concern there across the southern plains, lower Mississippi Valley. But the winter storm obviously was much more of just a winter storm cold blast. This is a much more mixed sort of pattern that we're going to see with severe weather in one area, flooding potential in another area, and as well as snow and ice in another region as well. All right, let me go back to the live chat here. I think I got most of the questions in the Q&A. Rice, anything for those in northwest Georgia? More of isolated severe weather is expected there. I wouldn't rule out isolated damaging winds, quarter-sized hail, but I would not expect anything too significant up that direction. So yeah, for those over there up to the, or over into Georgia, it's gonna be more of an isolated severe weather event. And this is the current outlook for Tuesday, right now a slight risk for northwest Georgia, but again, more of a damaging wind concern there. Tornado threat will be more of a concern in this region here, most likely across central Alabama and northern Alabama, back through central Mississippi. So from Jackson to Birmingham, that'll be kind of the area where there might be a bit more of a tornado threat in this region. So definitely an area to be concerned about for maybe a few tornadoes, but overall more of a damaging wind concern for the vast majority of anyone in this threat, which again goes from about Tennessee back through central and eastern Louisiana for Tuesday. So yeah, that's gonna be more of a damaging wind threat for sure. Maybe isolated large hail as well. Shouldn't be anything too significant though. No problem, Rice. Anyone in Missouri, Jerome, is going to be more on the low scale of severe weather, so isolated damaging winds is really my only concern there. Maybe isolated, I wouldn't really even say hail will happen. It'll be more just an isolated damaging wind event. Cannot rule out the potential for a brief tornado if you're in southern Missouri. So if we go back through the timing back up in Missouri, this is kind of a general gist of what you'll probably see. So more of just really scattered to numerous showers and a few storms across a large chunk of Missouri. This is kind of the cold frontal boundary area of storms from about Joplin back through Clinton, west of Columbia. And eventually going closer to about 9-10 o'clock is when we might see some storms kind of sneak out of Arkansas and might move off to the north and east. These could potentially pose the threat for some isolated tornado threats. So maybe an isolated brief or weak tornado, but it won't be anything significant. So if you're thinking about like an EF2 plus tornado, not going to happen this far to the north, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility for an isolated brief tornado if you're in southern Missouri. Otherwise, it's just isolated damaging winds for the most part across this area. Another thing to keep in mind, temperatures and whatnot. If we just go over the temperatures real quick in this area, they're not going to be that high. I mean, we're still talking about low 60s for temperatures. The moisture is also not going to retreat that high to the north either. So if you're in like southern Missouri, for example, dew points will be in like the upper 50s or mid 50s. That's not enough buoyancy for a significant severe weather event here across Missouri. So yeah, again, if you're in Missouri, I would not anticipate anything too significant there. Cody, if you want my thoughts on the snow, I just went over about 10 to 15 minutes ago. If you just go back in the stream, I have a full forecast on that. So, yeah, I have a full breakdown there. I also have a forecast tomorrow morning. That'll be all probably about the winter storm. I don't think it'll be about severe weather much of anything, but tomorrow's forecast will be about the winter storm, I think, more than anything. I'll have one tomorrow morning. Hey Terry, how you doing? Timeline for tornado or hail tomorrow in Bowie. Bowie will not see any severe weather tomorrow. So again, this is the current threat. Bowie's not even in a severe weather threat right now. If we go over to the timing as well, I'll kind of show you that as well. Let me find where it is right here. Overall, I'm not expecting severe weather there. And honestly, most of DFW will probably not see severe weather. If anything, it's just isolated stuff, primarily east of Dallas and Fort Worth. So if you're back near Texarkana, for example, possibly a couple of isolated severe storms, maybe capable of some damaging winds, hail, maybe a couple of tornadoes as well. That's primarily, though, over in northeast Texas. Otherwise, that cold front moves through around 3 to 4 o'clock. There won't be really any storms firing up there in Bowie at all. I mean, again, Bowie's over here, and yeah, you're not going to really see anything out of that direction. It'll be primarily just isolated severe weather. Maybe a couple of storms along this cold front could potentially become severe around 4 or 5 o'clock near Sherman, Plano, and Dallas, but it'll be pretty limited at that point. I don't expect too much of anything too significant there. Texarkana is in Bowie County. Is Bowie County somewhere else? Oh, we're talking about Bowie County. I think I said Bowie, Texas. I did not know. Actually, I did not know there was a Bowie County, Texas. I'm not gonna lie. I literally do North Texas weather, but I don't include this area on that page, and I did not realize there was a Bowie County. I apologize. For Texarkana, there's gonna be 2 different rounds. First round will be during the late morning and early afternoon, so some storms will fire up around about 10, 11, 12 o'clock. Eventually, by 1 to 2 o'clock, storms will fire up. Most likely, these could potentially pose more of a threat for all modes of severe weather. Damaging winds, again, isolated large hail. Hail will be more of a concern with the initial storms that fire up. Damaging winds is also a possibility as well, so these storms over this direction could pose that threat for some damaging winds, large hail, and also a possibility for a couple of isolated tornadoes out of those initial cells during the late morning and early afternoon, and eventually going closer to the afternoon, more of a cluster, and then the line of storms will roll through around 8, 9 o'clock. This could also pose the potential for a tornado threat. So if you're back over near northeast Texas and western Arkansas, I would definitely be mindful that there's a possibility here for some storms that could very well pose the potential for a more of a tornado threat with the cold front. So definitely be mindful of that if you're back over there in western Arkansas. Yeah, that's actually interesting, Alan. I've picked up on that. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Yeah, if you're in Texas, it's one of those things. Some cities and towns do not have like the same exact, like, it's weird. Yeah, Bowie's actually the first time I've heard of that one. But yeah, there's a few counties that have that. Stevens County, for example, is not it's not Stevensville County. It's also interesting. You're back over southwest North Texas. No problem, Terry. Yeah, if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and also like the video if you've not already. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. For now, since the chat is not too fast, I'm going to end the Q&A tab so you can just ask the questions in the general chat here. And I'll answer some of those here over the next few minutes. Here real quick. Alrighty. Northeast Ohio for ice and snow. Northeast Ohio doesn't have much of a threat here over the next at least 48 hours. Again, I'll have a full breakdown in tomorrow's forecast for winter storm stuff. I'll like literally have a full forecast tomorrow morning on that. So stay tuned for tomorrow morning's forecast. I'll have a full breakdown for you, and that'll include Ohio too, if anything is over that direction. But I haven't made a forecast on the winter storm yet, so I want to make sure I do that tomorrow morning. Central Oklahoma will not see much of any severe weather. Again, if we go a little bit closer, if you're like, you know, Norman or anywhere near Oklahoma City, not even in a threat for severe weather right now, so I wouldn't anticipate any severe weather here in Oklahoma. Again, possibly we might see an upgrade of a risk for those in eastern Oklahoma, possibly a bit higher of an enhanced risk here. I don't think it'll go that far north, but it might go a little bit further north here. So areas in far eastern Oklahoma near the interstate near Fort Smith, I believe it is, those areas actually could get upgraded into an enhanced risk of severe weather. But otherwise, for those in central Oklahoma, not in that concern right now for severe weather, and I wouldn't even rule out a moderate threat gets upgraded as well for those in central Arkansas. So definitely not out of the question there. Lebanon, Tennessee. Lebanon, Tennessee does have a chance for severe weather on Tuesday. It's a low threat, but it's not zero. Possibly isolated damaging winds. That's the main threat right now over that direction. Memphis. Yeah, actually, let me go back over to Memphis. I haven't really brought up that too much. Let me figure out where the timing is first. There we go. All right, so obviously Arkansas, if you've not already watched this entire live stream, Arkansas is the biggest concerned area right now for tomorrow in terms of tornadoes and damaging winds. Really, all modes of severe weather will be likely in Arkansas. Possibly some significant events as well. We could be talking about a couple of long-tracked and maybe even strong tornadoes in the state of Arkansas as well. This is a very concerning area. So going through tomorrow morning, just a couple of isolated showers, maybe an isolated rumble of thunder. By about lunchtime tomorrow, storms will fire up. Oop, I went way too far. By about lunchtime tomorrow, storms will begin to fire up south of Little Rock. These could potentially pose the threat for maybe some isolated damaging winds, maybe a little bit of quarter-sized hail as well. Can't rule on an isolated tornado as well. But this is definitely an area to watch for very closely for the potential for, again, maybe a couple of storms potentially posing a couple of isolated threats. But by about 2 o'clock is when I do expect storms to really ramp up more. So areas like Memphis, for example, will start to see potentially a couple more of those storms develop. That region might see a couple of those with some isolated severe weather. By about 3 or 4 o'clock, cluster of storms likely to develop. This could pose still all modes of severe weather. I would expect more of this to be a scattered event by this point. Again, from Memphis all the way back through Texarkana. And eventually by 5, 6 o'clock, storms rolling through areas like western Tennessee, so Dryersburg as well as Memphis. Those areas will likely be talking about a pretty strong and potentially severe line of, or really cluster I should say, of storms. By about 7, 8 o'clock is when we're going to see another round of storms go through the state of Arkansas. Back over to the west is those cold frontal boundary storms. These have the potential for maybe a couple of strong tornadoes as well, embedded back over near Texarkana. This will be an area to watch for, I think, very closely tomorrow evening. Once this line moves off to the east, we'll have all modes of severe weather still being possible. So by 10, 11 o'clock, storms rolling through areas like Little Rock, Conway, Hot Springs, Russellville, Pine Bluff. Eventually by midnight, 1 o'clock, more storms rolling through eastern and central Arkansas, and eventually going closer to about 3, 4 o'clock. Memphis will be getting more storm activity by then. So a secondary line of storms is expected to impact areas like western Tennessee. How does Shreveport, I can't talk. How does Shreveport look for tomorrow? Shreveport will be probably more of a, really all modes of severe weather possible there. Let me go back to the timing here. I'll kind of break down the timing more than anything here. You're under the enhanced risk of severe weather for tomorrow, but storm activity really going to be primarily in the early to mid-afternoon hours, and eventually possibly a secondary area of storms during the late evening and overnight hours. They'll be along that cold frontal boundary. So you might see 2 rounds of storms, isolated storms possible during the late morning and early afternoon, and then possibly by the late evening and overnight hours, there'll be our secondary line of storms along the cold frontal boundary for those in northern Louisiana. So that's the main concern right now. And again, I kind of want to make sure that you guys are aware of this as well. If you're in the southeast United States, another key thing to be watching for, again, we only have a slight risk for severe weather right now for those in Alabama and Mississippi. This might get upgraded. I wouldn't rule it out. For right now, I don't think it will, but it's not out of the question. There's definitely a possibility for a few tornadoes as well in areas like Alabama and Mississippi going into Tuesday. So this will be an event to watch for as well. Again, I'll have a full forecast on this as we get closer, but this will definitely be a concerning event as well. We could very well see some of these storms ramp up, potentially produce and pose a threat for a few tornadoes, again, from about Birmingham back through Jackson, Mississippi, out of a few of those cells. So definitely a threat there without a doubt. Again, as we get closer, I'll have some more updates on that. But for right now, it does seem to be something to watch for in the, not really long term, but in the longer short term, if you will. So let's go back over to, we'll go to this for right now. Oh, by the way, this is a tornado threat for right now. Storm Prediction Center has an update coming out at, I believe, 1 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll have an update on the severe weather threats and risk area at, I believe 1 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. I think it's 1 a.m. now. So for those in Northeast Texas and as well as Arkansas and Louisiana, there will be an update at then. And they might get, again, this zone may shift slightly further to the north and possibly slightly further to the east. I wouldn't rule that out. Maybe a bit further north and east in, excuse me, I keep saying Oklahoma. Further north and east in Arkansas, this threat may get shifted a bit further to the north and east. Parts of Louisiana and possibly a little bit further here to the south in the southern part of this hatched area also might get removed. But again, I'm not certain about that. It's possible though. But the latest trends, I wouldn't rule that out. But again, all modes of severe weather, significant tornado threat does seem to be pretty likely though across that region, especially again on this northern side of this area as well. I do anticipate this will be probably one of the worst areas that will be hit probably tomorrow during this tornado outbreak. That is expected. Oh, no problem, Cole. Appreciate you tuning in, by the way. You're doing well. Yeah, Buffalo, New York got hammered by that blizzard. Man, that blizzard, they've had already 2 massive blizzards this year. I think Buffalo, New York is over 100 inches now of official snowfall. It's unbelievable what they've been seeing there. Unbelievable. In San Francisco, I mean, we're not talking about snow there, but they almost got 6 inches of rain in 24 hours, which is also quite insane, to say the least. Hey, Frankie, how you doing? Welcome back. Is Henderson County southeast North Texas still? I can't remember. I think it is. But if you're anywhere in that region, isolated severe weather is possible, but I wouldn't expect much. If you're on like kind of if you're south of I-20 in Henderson County, I wouldn't expect much, but isolated severe storm is not out of the question. But otherwise, pretty limited in terms of severe weather. I don't think we'll see much in North Texas. Things over the last 24 hours have really changed for those in North Texas. Originally, it did seem to be a bit more maybe of a tornado outbreak, potentially beginning in DFW. That has obviously shifted a bit further to the east over time. Slight risk was as far west here, I think, as Denton County and Denton County and Tarrant County. It no longer is. It's now further to the east here, but yeah, I don't think the threat will be too significant there. Will I be live tomorrow? That's a great question. I think I'll be live at some point tomorrow. I'm not going to guarantee it yet, but I will probably be live at some point. Not sure when, but again, make sure to click the bell icon down below so you are notified when I go live, if I do, which I probably will at some point, but I'm not sure when. We will see. Better chance than not, I'll be live during the late morning and early afternoon, or possibly the evening. I don't know which one I'm going to do yet. See what happens, but I do plan on being live at some point tomorrow, but we'll see. If not, I'll definitely be live, I think, on Tuesday. See. Ain't confirmed tornadoes yet. This hasn't even started yet, so there's not been any confirmed tornadoes yet. Obviously, we haven't even begun this event. If we actually go back over to the infrared imagery, this is the current look at the United States right now, and this trough has not yet even set up for severe weather yet. But we are beginning to have some moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is obviously moving to the north with the southerly winds that we have. So it's going to start to ramp up that potential for some severe weather. Again, that was a horrible circle. But from about, again, southern Missouri back through northeast Texas and east Texas back through Louisiana. Again, a very large chunk of Arkansas will also be included in that potential. So this is the region right now that we're watching for the potential for severe weather. But again, the trough is way back out here still to the west. It has not really set up to that point where we're going to start to see severe weather ramp up. It'll still be another about 12-ish hours from now, 13-ish hours from now until we'll see our first storm start to initiate, which will be late tomorrow morning. More than over there in Sioux City, that area will likely see around 1/4 inch of ice. That's probably the general idea of what you'll probably see. Realistic range, well, let me go over to the ice again here. Realistic range, probably somewhere between about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, maybe to about 1/12 of an inch to about 1/7 of an inch, kind of in that range. Probably more likely than not, but you might get upwards of 1/4. I would expect more of the more significant ice will probably be here in Iowa. Obviously, computer models are really hinting at that, but not just that. Obviously, the the ice storm warnings are in effect for those in southern Minnesota, north and western portions of Iowa, as well as eastern Nebraska. So this is the region that we still have the ongoing ice storm warnings. But over near Sioux City, I would reasonably expect between about 1/12 to 1/7 of an inch of ice. More likely than not going to be the range, but you might get upwards of 1/4. Wouldn't rule that out. Again, if we go over to the computer models here, in that Sioux City area is right around 1/10 of an inch. So again, right in that range. Seems pretty reasonable. Wisconsin is definitely under the gun for the potential for a winter storm as well. There may be some ice going into maybe Tuesday. I'll have a full forecast on this again tomorrow, but this might be an area to watch for some ice potential. So if you're over there in central Wisconsin, there will also be a possibility for some snow further to the north on the northern side of this trough, mostly rain, really in southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois, but potential for maybe upwards of a few inches of snow. Might even see a couple areas here in western Wisconsin get upwards of maybe 1/2 foot of snow, maybe 8 inches, but again, we're a little bit early on that timing. Once we get a little bit more of an idea of how this trough evolves over the next 24 hours, will give us a much better idea of what we can expect in terms of snowfall, because again, it really hasn't even developed yet. This is right about now on the live radar. And again, at bottom right of your, or bottom left of your screen, that's basically all that's out there right now. Just a few snow flurries. The trough really hasn't evolved into a winter storm yet. It will going into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, which is when the snow will really start to ramp up more, and then eventually going closer to late Monday into Tuesday is when this really turns into a full-blown winter storm and ice storm once freezing rain begins in northern portions and even central portions of Iowa and all the way back through eastern Nebraska, and it really starts to ramp up even more going into Tuesday morning. I would expect the worst time frame for this, for the accumulation purposes, will be late Monday night into Tuesday morning, that kind of time frame. So yeah, I definitely expect more of a significant threat there, but other than that, lighter stuff by Tuesday afternoon is expected. Major travel impacts, by the way, are expected from northern Nebraska back through western Minnesota, and where that ice storm is expected, moderate impacts are expected. Again, untreated roads will be dangerous to drive on as well, so be mindful of that if you're anywhere in those areas. Again, northern Iowa and eastern Nebraska. John, no storms are expected for Chicago. Even snow is not expected either. That area shouldn't see much of anything. Hey, you can feel free to, yeah, definitely film it, yeah. If you have any photos or videos, you can send them in to me on Twitter. You can also send it in on Discord. I'll link the Discord in the chat, by the way. If you guys have Discord, feel free to join that. The link will be posted by Nightbot, and you can always send in photos there as well. But yeah, I will definitely, if you have any photos or videos, feel free to send them in. Always a good thing. Always like looking at that sort of stuff. I'm assuming I'll see some on Twitter anyways, but. Apparently Hartford, Connecticut just came off of its 5th warmest year on record. Saw that on Twitter. Had some really warm years recently. Jeez. Hartford is really warming up. All right. Hey Haley, how you doing? Welcome. Going. Yeah, if you're new here to the YouTube channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. By the way, make sure to click the bell icon down below. In case I do go live tomorrow, which I probably will at some point, make sure that you are subscribed and have clicked the bell icon. That way you get notified when I go live. Also, make sure to hit the, yeah, that's it. I don't know why I was about to say something else. Let me just check something real quick. And all right, so cool. This system is rather interesting. Yes, this is a very interesting system. Every trough, for the most part, is unique in its own way and different. This one is definitely different. I mean, this is nothing in comparison to what we just saw with that blizzard and Arctic blast a couple weeks ago. I mean, that was a really different system from this. This is still something to be very mindful of. Very significant severe weather is definitely expected, but the last one we just had, that trough that brought, you know, snow as well as a blizzard-like condition, or blizzard conditions. I mean, I shouldn't even say blizzard-like. It was blizzard conditions, along with this massive Arctic blast. It doesn't really compare to this, because this is more of a severe weather event attached to a trough that is also bringing a winter storm up to the north, because this isn't it. This is your winter storm that's going to be ongoing back over in the Central Plains back through the Midwest. This is an area to still watch for snow and ice, while in the meantime, severe weather will be ongoing down here. So two different regions that we're watching here with this event. And this will obviously evolve even beyond that point, or that's tomorrow, that point. So by Tuesday, we'll still be talking about snow and ice back up this direction, severe weather back through here, and eventually moving off to the east into areas like Georgia, and also the possibility for even some flooding. There is already a flood watch in effect for East Texas, a large chunk of Louisiana, and as well as east or southwestern portions of Arkansas. So yeah, it's a really interesting trough here. Not sure which one I can really compare this to recently. I feel like there's been I think December 11th would probably be the closest comparison that we've had as of recently to this event. That'd probably be the most reasonable comparison, but it will not, I don't think, be as significant as what we saw with the December 11th event. This is gonna be like the January 2nd and 3rd outbreak, most likely. I don't think this will be as bad as the December 11th one, which we just had last month, that brought like a load of tornadoes across the southern plains through the Dixie Valley, but it reasonably will bring a decent amount of a tornado threat as well as damaging winds. Like in all modes of severe weather likely going to be coming out of this. So Maddie, it is possible. Yeah, if we look at the future radar here, and this is what you're probably referring to, a possible squall line is not out of the question. And that'd be along this cold front, by the way. I mean, we're gonna have 2 rounds of storms. This would be the second one in Arkansas. This could potentially become a bit more of a squall line. So this is definitely be something to watch for here. It would be the cold frontal storms that will fire up during the late afternoon and early evening. This could pose, again, all modes of severe weather. Strong tornadoes not out of the question with this line either. And it really evolves as it heads into the overnight hours back near Memphis. It becomes much more defined, at least on this computer model, from Greenville back through Memphis and Dyersburg. So definitely be something to watch for here. Hey, no problem, Williams. No problem. Appreciate you tuning in. My pleasure. Hey, Jen, how you doing? Welcome back. Yeah, I mean, this is so comparing this to the summer 11th outbreak, I just don't think that this doesn't have nearly the same ingredients as what we saw back on December 11th. It has very similar ones for sure. I mean, we still have a very strong low-level jet, low-level rotation. This setup, though, does seem to be a bit more of not a discrete setup. I feel like this can become a bit more of a clustered situation. So that might limit a tornado threat a little bit in Arkansas and whatnot. We'll still see a couple of strong tornadoes, most likely at least. But I just don't see this being an event where we see several strong tornadoes and long track tornadoes, again, like what we saw back in December 11th. They're similar, but I don't think they're the exact same here by any means. But I wouldn't rule out that this does get to a moderate threat of severe weather. It's not out of the question, maybe in Arkansas, but other than that, I do think it's still on the lower end of what we saw with the December 11th event. But this is not something that you should not take as seriously as the December 11th event, because again, very similar in terms of their setups and whatnot, but this one I do think slightly weaker, not by much though. I do think this will still be a pretty significant severe weather event for sure across the southern plains, again back through the lower Mississippi Valley, eventually into the southeast United States. By the way, this will eventually march into the southeast by Tuesday into Wednesday, and mid-Atlantic region could also see some marginal severe storms as well for those over there in the Carolinas, as well as back into Virginia. Maybe a couple of isolated severe storms on Wednesday, but nothing significant. Yeah. And tomorrow will be the greatest threat it'll kind of downgrade over time. So if we kind of put this on a scale here of severe weather, this is the highest level that we've probably ever seen, or really highest. Let's just go highest of 2022, which is honestly December 11th was crazy. But if we kind of went on a scale here of what this is at, it'd probably be right about here for tomorrow, and eventually going into the following day on Tuesday, probably down to about here. And by Wednesday, it should be on the very low side of the scale for the mid-Atlantic. So again, highest threat will be tomorrow, and then it'll start to kind of go a little bit lower as the days go on. But tomorrow, worst day. Then over in the southeast, so those over in Mississippi, back through areas in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, and even Louisiana, the potential for severe weather exists there. I would not rule out we see an enhanced risk with this region as well, going into Tuesday, but then into Wednesday, it should become more of a marginalized severe weather threat across the East Coast. Kimber, it's going to be around 1 a.m. Eastern time, I believe. Yeah, it's 1 a.m. Eastern time is when the Storm Prediction Center issues their new outlook. And I will be up when that happens. So I'll post an update on Twitter. If you're not following me on Twitter, by the way, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting updates over there as well. Storm Prediction Center forecast comes out at 1 a.m. So you guys can check that out. Links in the chat from my thing. I haven't seen Arkansas in 40 years. Wow. I went there I think the last time I was there was maybe 3 years ago. I don't think the Metroplex will get upgraded. No, North Texas, I don't expect to get upgraded. If anything, I would expect it to get downgraded, actually. So, no Canadian. This is a standing desk, so I don't have my background anymore. We're changing things up. I'm actually standing right now, by the way. Yeah, I don't think the Metroplex will get upgraded. If anything, downgraded is what I would expect. That is my thinking. Yeah, significant severe weather again tomorrow, Tuesday, possibly through Mississippi and Alabama. Again, I would not rule out an enhanced risk of severe weather by then. And then Wednesday, isolated severe storms on the East Coast. That's my current thinking in the broad sense of things. Obviously, specifically, you can go back to like the very beginning of this live stream. It has all the details there as well. I would appreciate if it gets downgraded. Yeah, I think DFW will get downgraded. It's possible that they keep it. The only reason why I think they may at least keep a marginal threat, which this is what I would, if I was the Storm Prediction Center, I would do. But obviously, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But really going to tomorrow afternoon, I think the only chance of severe weather for North Texas, at least in the DFW Metroplex, will be with the cold front. And if storms can beat the cap around 2-3 o'clock, they might form over the Metroplex. But right now, it does not seem like that'll happen. It seems like there'll be more of an isolated sort of in nature along that cold front, and it'll probably be east of Interstate 35W. So Denton County, Tarrant County, very low chance of severe weather. I would even say for Dallas and Collin County, very low. Low over here. It really increases back over here near Paris and Tyler. Right now, the HRR model is indicating the potential for potentially some very severe storms would develop maybe slightly further east there of Paris and Tyler, but it's not out of the question along this cold front. We might see a couple of storms here near Tyler and Paris develop. That could lead to the possibility for a couple of these storms to rotate, potentially produce tornadoes, and maybe even a strong tornado is not out of the question with a storm that develops out this direction. So definitely not out of the question there. We'll have to watch that closely. I wish it could downgrade in Louisiana. I don't think it'll downgrade in Louisiana. If it does downgrade in Louisiana, the only area that I would expect that would maybe be somewhere in here. But even then, I just don't think it will. Mainly due to the fact we'll have a late night into overnight threat of a line of storms that'll produce all modes of severe weather. So slight risk at the bare minimum is what I would expect. Enhanced risk, I still think will stay there. I don't think it'll move or, get downgraded at this point. I don't think it'll get upgraded either. I think it's going to probably stay at where it is right now. But, I could be wrong. You never know. Yeah, I'm not the Storm Prediction Center, so. My mic audio is different. Yeah, I got to get some sound barriers because it does echo, unfortunately. I do have to fix that. Gulf Coast, Mississippi, tornado threat. Not much of anything. Let me go back over to Mississippi real quick. I wouldn't expect much of a tornado threat there. More of a damaging wind concern. You might have an isolated tornado threat during the very late portion of Tuesday morning into Tuesday afternoon with some of these storms that develop, but tornado threat should stay low. It won't be zero, but it will be low. An isolated tornado or two maybe near West Gulfport, but between Hadesburg and West Gulfport, maybe an isolated tornado or two. But for now, it's still on the low side. We'll have more details again on that tomorrow. Once this system really evolves, we'll have much more of a breakdown for you in terms of what to expect going into Tuesday. Because really, once we start to see what happens, it kind of evolves on Monday. We have a better idea of what to expect going into Tuesday, as the event has already begun. We're going to see that line of storms march all the way through areas like Mississippi and Alabama and that entire cluster. So we'll have a much better idea tomorrow on that. Hey, congratulations, Kaylee. Yeah, I think Missouri will be all right. Missouri shouldn't be really in too much of a risk here. I know they're in a marginal / slight risk. You're kind of on the cusp there, but I think it'll be more just an isolated damaging wind threat. Nothing much more beyond that. It should be pretty low end threats overall there. If we go back over to the timing again, let me figure out where that is here. So overall, again, mostly just rain, isolated severe storms possible, maybe an isolated tornado threat in far southern portions of Missouri, but no strong tornadoes would be expected this far to the north. So yeah, overall, I wouldn't expect anything too significant. I think southern and southeast Missouri have the best chance for maybe some more of those, maybe stronger, slightly more severe storms. So isolated damaging winds, hail, possibility for an isolated tornado would also exist here. For those in Paris, Texas, you're in that enhanced risk right now of severe weather, so be mindful of that. Paris, Texas is actually in that hatched area for a tornado threat. And I just went over that a second ago, but I'll go back to the timing here for North Texas, and it's going to really depend on when these storms fire up here along that cold front. And right now the HR model shows around 7 they would, and if that does happen, you know, these storms will be just to your east, but it's possible that they do develop closer to 5 o'clock, and we might see those storms closer to Paris, Texas. So this will be a close call for you, but with these storms that develop along this cold front, they will have an increased tornado potential. So these storms will definitely be something to watch for, and you can even see here around 7, maybe a storm being there as well. So yeah, 6, 7 o'clock would be, or right around 4, I'll give you a reasonable time range. About 4 to 8 o'clock if you're in Paris is your best chance for storm activity. But there's definitely a possibility for a tornado threat then as well. Thank you, Devin, by the way, for the $2 super chat. Tulsa. Yeah, Tulsa's in the, I believe, on the cusp of that slight risk right now, and I would expect that to stay that way. This is the timing for tomorrow. Storms firing up during the mid to late afternoon hours near Tulsa along the cold frontal boundary. So here's your cold front, right around 4 or 5 o'clock. Those are the storms that'll fire up. By 5 o'clock, they become really still scattered, not organized. This isn't a squall line by any means at this point, but they will evolve as they move further off to the east. But I think they will be far enough to the east to the point where they will not be significant near the Tulsa area. So Tulsa shouldn't see anything too significant in terms of severe weather, but I would not rule out that you see a couple of isolated severe storms, maybe some isolated damaging winds there, but overall threat should remain low. I would anticipate there. Yeah, anywhere in eastern Oklahoma. I mean, if further east you are in Oklahoma, the better chance you have of severe weather, but I would expect that this is the region in Oklahoma that has the most substantial severe weather out of any other part of Oklahoma. Tulsa, I would still say, is kind of on that low end right now of severe weather. By the way, we're only 40 subscribers away from 28,600. If you've not already, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Like the video as well if you're new here. Would appreciate it. Also, click the bell icon down below so you're notified when I post the latest forecasts and live streams. Again, that's the best way to stay updated with Max Velocity here on YouTube. Perth's weather doesn't scare you as much as now. Yeah, honestly, you know, if you remember, if anybody did anybody go through the December 11th event with all the tornado outbreak in the southern plains to the Dixie Valley? That was a bit earlier. Obviously, that was almost about a month ago from now, but that brought a load of tornadoes. It was really a big event in North Texas. Brought 16 tornadoes across the region of North Texas, and that was during the morning hours from about I think about 5:36 a.m. all the way through about 11 a.m. 12 p.m. So significant event there. Bit of a kind of like a breakup point here in the middle. Eventually ramped up again back through Louisiana as well as through Mississippi and Alabama. And that event was absolutely significant. I mean, it was unbelievable what we saw there out of that severe weather outbreak. It was remarkable. Yeah, that was a crazy event. Again, I don't think this will be the exact same of what we just saw back on December 11th, but maybe slightly weaker than that event. But yeah, that was definitely a very historical event. That was something that was unbelievable. Unbelievable there. Oh, did you, Kaylee? Yeah, that'd probably make sense. I think a lot of people were watching me then. That was a big event that I covered. I was doing more of a night coverage of that event, I think. But move to Kentucky after the Bowling Green tornado. Kentucky's still in the realm of severe weather there too. Kentucky's on the cusp. It's really just southwest and western portions of Kentucky and that little marginal threat. Otherwise, it's a pretty low threat. Just an isolated tornado threat. Again, I wouldn't rule out that this hatched area does shift slightly further to the north and east. It may expand a little bit, and with that being said, it might even expand even to a moderate threat there in central Arkansas. So we'll have to watch that. And I think Arkansas is going to really be hit hard by this event tomorrow. Thank you, Donald Matthew, as well, for subscribing. I appreciate it, guys. Welcome. Yeah, this will be again tomorrow. That's what tomorrow looks like. Then Tuesday, we'll have to watch this event again on Tuesday. So N8 Snyder. I don't know who that is. Interesting. Oh, is that another person that does YouTube or something, or some weather thing? Feel bad for Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas is gonna be hit hard, unfortunately. It's definitely. I think Arkansas again will be hammered by this event, and then going into Tuesday again, this will kind of shift further to the east, and then Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and Louisiana will be impacted by it. So it'll evolve here, and obviously not nearly as significant by Tuesday, but Monday will be a big event. Tuesday still significant. Wednesday, severe weather on the East Coast as possible, but it should stay minimal. Jelly, anywhere in Virginia is just isolated severe weather on Wednesday, if anything. So, marginal threat at worst case scenario. But other than that, just isolated damaging winds possible then. Alrighty. Well, that's going to wrap up this stream. I do appreciate everybody tuning in. A good 1.5 hour little weather discussion here. And okay, but I do appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you've not already, again, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Like the stream if you've not already as well. And before you leave, make sure to click the bell icon down below so you're notified on the next live stream and video forecast. Also, join our Discord server. Link will be in the chat there from Nightbot. So if you have Discord, make sure to join that. But other than that, I do appreciate you all tuning in tonight. Again, I'm not sure 100% if I'll be live tomorrow or when. I really have no clue. I'm going to try to go live either during the late morning or early afternoon or sometime during the evening. One of the two, whichever one I can do, I'll try to do. But other than that, I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Have a great, safe rest of your night, and we'll see you guys all again soon. And also, by the way, thank you, Dragon, again, for the 10 gifted members tonight on stream. I appreciate that a lot. And anybody else that super chatted or became a member, I appreciate you guys a lot. Really helps the page out a lot. Hey, guys, have a great night. Happy New Year's, by the way. And we'll see you guys all again soon.